Welcome to the Armani Talks YouTube channel. I'm your host, Armani Talks. In this channel, I'm covering communication skills for you to level up your way with words and become much more articulate. In today's episode, we're entering the world of public speaking, and we're going to be breaking down my experience with Toastmasters. The reason that I'm going to be highlighting my personal experience is because a lot of the times when someone is thinking about joining Toastmasters for the first time, they have a couple of questions. One question is, does the club work? They do their research, they go on YouTube, they see other people giving speeches, and they're like, okay, well, I guess if I participate in the club, then it's going to work to a certain extent. Then the next question that they often get is, let's just say that I do join the club. I mean, what kind of time requirements are going to be required from my end? I mean, is this something that is going to be sustainable? Is it worth it? And this is when they transition their focus from how the club works more towards personal anecdotes of previous club members or present club members. And that's the purpose of today's video. Throughout my life, I have been in a part of 3+ Toastmasters clubs, somewhere in my work, somewhere in my nearby location, and some were when I moved out of state. Initially, I joined Toastmasters by not even knowing what it is. I had a buddy that told me that this public speaking club was coming. I was like, what kind of public speaking club is called Toastmasters? I'm thinking it's a food company or something, but it wasn't. It was a public speaking company, or better yet, organization that came to my college. I went, I wasn't planning on participating, and I ended up getting called to participate. My first encounter with the club wasn't the most positive because I really just went there to observe, and I did not want to participate because I had such high speech anxiety. And once that meeting was done, I didn't think that I was ever going to go back to another meeting again because I felt somewhat embarrassed. Some months went on by, and that's when I was like, you know, I got the worst part out of the way. This is one of the good things about choking a speech, because when you choke the speech and some time passes on by, it's like, okay, I mean, it wasn't that bad. And that's when I go to another Toastmasters meeting. And from there, I just needed to say a few words, and automatically I'm better than my first time participating or lack of participating. And the second meeting went way better. And that's when I was like, you know, I want to be committed to this club, and I want to see where it's going to take me. So I started to understand the feel for how a meeting goes. I saw that there were impromptu speeches, there were planned speeches, there were evaluations. I went on to become a member, and I went to give my first ever speech, the Toastmasters icebreaker speech, where it was an experience. And because leading up to a speech, you gotta do a lot of preparation behind the scenes. You get assigned a mentor, so you could ask them questions if you want to. For me, I was feeling a little bold. I didn't ask my mentor anything. No offense, John. And I gave the speech. It's on my YouTube channel. I'll link it right on here if you're watching from a cell phone or laptop, or you could just go to Armani Talks Toastmasters icebreaker speech on YouTube. That was an experience. That was one of the first times I realized that public speaking was a skill set. This isn't something that people are just born with. It's a muscle. Because initially, I got very curious about the club because I used to have a lot of these nervous thoughts of, man, if you ever get called up on stage, you're going to look like a fool. So I was motivated to go to the club due to fear. And once I gave my first speech, it felt like a drug, like adrenaline. It's sort of like when you're watching a really good Netflix series and you're just hooked. You just want to watch the next episode and the next episode and the one after that. But with public speaking, it was a immersive experience. It was you that was there. So after giving a couple of speeches, I started to eventually do evaluations. And evaluations are when you are evaluating someone else's speech. So thus far into the club, I learned about impromptu speaking, about planned speaking, and about evaluations. And I just wanted to know more. So eventually I started to volunteer as the Toastmaster, for the timer, for the counter, the grammarian, and I was viewing public speaking from a bunch of different angles. As that year was winding down, the e-board was going to step down, and they wanted me to start being more involved in the leadership part of Toastmasters. So I was working on being the recruitment chair and the external vice president, the person who is responsible for getting our Toastmasters club more into the community. So I built a Facebook page and I started to get the message out there. I started to see new people coming into the club who were struggling with speech anxiety, and they had a lot of the common questions. And I thought, this is so cool. I mean, these people don't even know each other. However, they're asking a lot of the similar questions. And this is when I could empathize with them, because I too once had the same questions. And Toastmasters was giving me something that I never intended to get from the club. Initially, I thought I was just going to learn public speaking, but later on, I was starting to get confidence. Confidence is born through clarity and competence. And after participating in so many different angles of Toastmasters, I felt more competent to answer these people's questions. I ended up joining more clubs, and I started to practice on different audience members. Normally, if you practice on 3 different audience members, a lot of the speech anxiety turns into speech excitement. So this was good. As more years started to go on by, what started to happen was Toastmasters started to change its program. Before, in the old school days, we were all working out of this book called Competent Communicator. And it was good, but it was pretty, I could say, stagnant. Later on, they introduced the Pathways program, where you, the speaker, can choose the path that you want to enter. Some people enter Toastmasters because they want to be a better leader. They have been working in the cube their entire lives, and suddenly they got a promotion, and now they have to be the leader of people. Well, you're in luck, because the Toastmasters Pathways program has a path for leadership. Someone else may be like, I want to enter Toastmasters because I really want to start this YouTube channel. It's just, I don't have much personality. I'm not a funny guy. Well, luckily for you, there's a path called the humor path. Maybe you're one of those people that knows how to communicate one-on-one, but in team settings, you're either very quiet or very aggressive. Well, you're in luck. There's a path for you as well, called a dynamic team working, something like that. So once Toastmasters was introducing this new program, I was thinking, I'm going to restart the entire program again and try it in pathways, and I'm going to choose the humor path. As I was doing that, that's when I started the Armani Talks Twitter page, and I started to document my experience. I was sharing a lot of the public speaking insights that I was learning on my Twitter account, and the account was just growing because people were very curious. They were like, wait, what the hell is Toastmasters? Is that for food? And it felt like life was doing a full circle, because now I was able to educate other people from all around the planet on what this club was. So as my journey evolved in Toastmasters, I went from being a member to now getting tons of people from all around the world to be aware of the club and join the club. Now, if you're someone that's thinking about joining, it really comes down to how much time can you allocate towards it? And why do you really want it? Let's just start off there. There has to be that desire, because a lot of people enter Toastmasters similar to me. It started off with some form of darkness. Maybe they're too shy. Maybe they get nervous around people. Maybe they're afraid of bombing the best man speech that they have coming up. Something fear related, but they don't just stop at fear. There's that glory that they also envision in their mind. So if you have that, then it's much more likely that you will participate in Toastmasters. I lost count of how many times people would go from guests to becoming a member, but they would never give speeches. They would never volunteer in the other roles where they could speak, like being a timer, a grammarian, a counter, etc. And I'm like, well, why the hell did you join the club in the first place? And a lot of the times, these people are the most negative. They're like, Toastmasters isn't working for me. So that's when I realized that desire often correlates with the work that you put into the club, and the work that you put into the club is the results that you will extract. Also, another thing to understand, especially if you're a working professional or if you're a full-time student, is that there is some preparation that's required, especially in the weeks when you're giving, let's say, a speech, you're picking up a position that you've never picked up before, where you need to study on what the position requires, if you have to do some training in the back end. So I recommend, if you can't allocate at least 1 to 2 hours outside of the meeting to invest in the club, then you may want to double check on whether or not you want to join. It's not always going to require 1 to 2 hours outside of the meeting. It's mainly on those weeks when you're going to be participating. But that's one of the biggest things that I want to share, that one of the reasons that my experience with Toastmasters has been great is because I go in with the intention of joining the club in order to participate. It didn't matter if I was in 1 club or 3 clubs. If I'm going to go to a meeting, it has to be participation or bust to a certain extent. Some meetings are so packed where you won't have the opportunity to participate, even if you want to. But that's a rare occurrence. As the journey has been progressing, one of the things that I've learned the most about Toastmasters is that even though it's marketed as a public speaking club, I think it's much better if you view it as a social skills club that happens to teach public speaking. The reason why is because initially, when I was going to Toastmasters, I was pretty much just going in to give a speech. And once I gave the speech and participated and the meeting ended, I dipped. But once I started to view it more as a social skills club, I would go there, interact with a lot of the members, form connections, turn acquaintances into friends, and we all had this shared mission of now participating and improving our communication skills. When I viewed it as a social skills club that happens to teach public speaking, when I would travel to different parts of the US, let's say Chicago, and I'm bored, I have nothing to do, I'm like, you know what? I'll go to a Toastmasters because it is an international club, and I'll find some people to be social with, and hey, I'll sharpen my public speaking skills along the way. So that was my experience with Toastmasters. I've enjoyed it a lot. It turned a person that used to have a lot of speech anxiety and social anxiety to communicating, and nowadays teaching introverted entrepreneurs, shy engineers, etc., much about the art and science of communication skills and how it is a muscle. You can learn it, and the beauty about public speaking is that it doesn't discriminate. Man, woman, tall, short, fat, skinny, doesn't matter. If the desire is there, you can always learn public speaking. And by the way, Toastmasters doesn't pay me a penny. That just goes on to show that I'm not an affiliate or anything with this club. I just highly recommend it because it's improved my life. By the way, Toastmasters, let's work out a deal. Y'all should be paying me. I'm just joking. Now, if you enjoyed today's talk and you want to learn more about public speaking and you want to understand insights that you may not get from Google, you want practical advice, then be sure to check out my book, The Speaking Wizard, A Magical World of Public Speaking. This book breaks down speech anxiety. It breaks down how you can turn speech anxiety into speech excitement. It introduces you to rules like the 5X rule on how to practice your speech, how to deliver it with the utmost confidence. Oh, and did I mention that there's a chapter on Toastmasters? If you're looking to improve your public speaking skills, be sure to check out the Speaking Wizard in the description box in the pinned comment, or you can go straight to ArmaniTalks.com and grab your copy today. Thank you very much for joining the Armani Talks YouTube channel, and I'll catch you next time.